Hello and welcome to another Don't Get Me Going podcast episode. My name is Zoe Lulinski, and heading into week 7 already, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we have a lot to talk about. This has been one of the weirdest NFL seasons I think we've seen in a very long time. I'm going to start off by recapping Monday night's 2 games, which 2 games is pretty rare for Monday Night Football, but it was fun. As a Bears fan, I very much enjoyed watching these games. In hindsight, at least, I liked it. And then I'm going to be getting into top 10 teams, playoff picture, and a couple of other of my thoughts as we get going. But to recap last night's games, the Bills are going to be heading into their much-needed bye week in week 7. They just had 2 straight losses against the Falcons and the Patriots. Now, the Patriots are in their division, so I don't think that's as crazy as an outcome, especially the Patriots have been hot coming into the season so far. Both teams are 4-2 with the Bills and Patriots, but with this loss against the Falcons, the Bills have now fallen into second place in their division, with the Patriots once again having number 1 after a couple of years. They're back in their number 1 spot. How surprising. I'm honestly happy for Drake May though and everything, but Josh Allen just had another game where he slightly struggled. The reigning MVP, per se, had, I think, 2 interceptions in this game. I think that's his 4th one of the season, where if you want to compare it to his MVP season last year, he had 6 in the entire season, so he's already well on his way to that number. Let's hope that this bye week for him, they get to look at a couple things. They had a lot of penalties, and I'll be talking about penalties way more here in a minute. But just a rough game for the team overall. The defense had a rough night for them, and despite all that, they still had an opportunity to take the win, but the Falcons were able to close that out. I don't think the Bills deserved to win that game with the way they played. The Falcons played a very good game. And this is going to lead me into a couple of my other thoughts before we get into the second game of Monday night. But this whole season has been insanely surprising with what we've seen from every team. But I'll get into that a bit more later. And then in the second Monday night game, oh, by the way, there was another blocked field goal as well. So the Bills definitely had their chances to steal that game despite the way they were playing. And then second game of the night was Bears versus Commanders. A little bit of a rematch from last year when the Hail Mary game. I want to forget that as soon as possible. And honestly, this game very much helped me to progress through that and forget that game from last year. Completely new Bears team. I think the Bears are winning games that they in previous years would have definitely lost. I think we've seen it now in back-to-back weeks where, mind you, 25-24 in back-to-back weeks. I'm pretty sure that's only like the second time to happen in NFL history. So, I mean, good for the Chicago Bears, I guess. It's a really interesting stat, but I think they're winning games that they wouldn't have originally won in past seasons, and I think we saw that a lot last year with the Bears losing a lot of close games, a lot of heartbreakers, the Commanders one being one included, and now they just won 2 back-to-back by having all-around important contributions on all 3 sides of the ball for the Chicago Bears the last 2 weeks. Now, that does not mean that they've had perfect games by any means. They had lots of flags called on them and a lot of missteps, but I think there's definitely progress being shown, especially with it just being Ben Johnson's 5th game as head coach for the Chicago Bears. But to get on the topic of flags, I don't want to talk about this too much because it is very controversial, but the refs in that game were so ticky-tacky, and I'm not even saying that as a Bears fan. I think it was ticky-tacky both ways. There was a holding call on a return for the Bears that was called on the Commanders that I don't think was a holding call. A couple other things you could look at on the Commander side, but as I was watching, the biggest things I noticed was that there was an Odunze touchdown taken back, and in the end, I'm completely fine with what happened because Odunze's touchdown getting taken back won me my fantasy game, and the Bears won in the end. However, it does break his 4-game streak of scoring touchdowns, which is a little unfortunate. But there was just some horrendous calls on all quarters, all ends of the field. The roughing the passer calls, I think, were valid. You could argue that he hit, Jaquan Brisker hit below Jaden Daniels' knee to extend the drive, but lots of mistakes by the Bears for flags that extended the Commanders' drives an unnecessary amount. There were multiple times that pretty much it just ends up being a turnover with those happening. Nashawn Wright had one in the first half with a holding call on defense, but that big one on Theo Benedette, which a lot of people, including the announcers, even said they didn't see anything wrong with that play. and if you're wondering, I don't know if you guys didn't watch the game last night and it's gone viral on social media. Troy Aikman and the announcers were going in on the Bears every chance they got, which I feel like I'm used to. I feel like that happens all the time, but just watching them brag and boast about Jaden Daniels, who, mind you, does deserve it. He's a very good player. Boasting about Jaden Daniels, and then any chance they got on the Bears offense, just slandering them. But I think Jaden Daniels overall, despite his mistakes, did show. I think he is fully healthy back from his injury, but he made a couple very crucially bad decisions. That first drive, throwing an interception to Jaquan Brisker, and no one's talking about it. He did fumble twice. He had the game-changing fumble at the end there that got the Bears the ball at the end of the game to get into field goal position. But earlier in the game, he also fumbled one other time that he did fall back on it. So just lots of mistakes there for Jaden Daniels, but I think this game did show with his running ability, he's more comfortable, and I think he's ready to get back from that injury fully. Those are the two Monday night games. I kind of rambled there a little bit, but this has been a really crazy season so far. I think if you want to look at MVPs so far, 6 weeks through, I think there's only one clear favorite right now, and I think that's got to be Baker Mayfield. He's 5-1, leading the Buccaneers to a 5-1 start. And yes, they started in the top 10 this season. I think they were expected to be pretty solid this season, but they lost, I think, all 4 of their top wide receivers at one point. Mike Evans has been hurt. Emeka Egbuka got hurt this game. Chris Godwin out with another injury, and then McMillan has been out. He had a season-ending injury at the beginning of the season. So the fact that he's able to do Bucky Irving, his number one running back's also out. So I think the fact that Baker Mayfield is also, mind you, playing against some pretty big talent these last few games, lots of close games, lots of fun games to watch, but he's playing lights out. He's playing absolutely insane and carrying the Buccaneers team. Mahomes, if you want to argue someone else, maybe Mahomes, but I don't think he's anywhere close to how Baker Mayfield's playing right now. Josh Allen, like I mentioned already, is playing a bit below the standards that you'd expect. Lamar Jackson's been out. Joe Burrow's out, which, mind you, I think the fact that we're seeing him out and seeing how bad the Bengals are playing shows you just how valuable Joe Burrow is. They're a bottom 5 team right now, in my opinion, without Joe Burrow, but with him, they were 2-0. I think people are undermining just how good Joe Burrow is. I mean, honestly, seeing the way the team is, he should have won MVP last season. Just looking straight out at how the team is performing without him and how all these other players are performing. I know that was last season and you know, it's different, but he had insane stats last season as well. So I think out of any player, Joe Burrow is the most valuable, but Baker Mayfield is by far the front runner for MVP this season. And then in some other news, the Titan first head coach has been fired of the season, which is Brian Callahan for the Titans after a 1-5 start. He had his first season with the team last year, and he was 3-14. And I honestly don't blame the team for firing him already. He has shown little to no progress in rebuilding this team, especially with the rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. The one win they had came on tremendously horrible choke that the Cardinals had 2 weeks ago in Week 5. So I'm curious to see candidates. I think I heard Matt Nagy and Arthur Smith might be in the running, but it's very much too early to tell, so I'd take that with a grain of salt there. But like I mentioned, Emeka Egbuka got hurt, and he's not alone in the wide receiver injuries this week. I think the wide receivers this season getting hurt is playing a major role in the weirdness and weird records we're seeing. I mean, I think almost every single top wide receiver has had some type of injury. Malik Neighbors tore his ACL. Garrett Wilson got hurt this week. Shouldn't be too long. CeeDee Lamb has been out for a couple weeks. Marvin Harrison got hurt this week, also did not finish out the game. Puka Nacua got hurt this week. Emeka Egbuka, like I said, got hurt this week. Just an insane amount of wide receiver injuries. which I there's players that get hurt every single season, every single week, but I don't remember a time it's been this bad. Honestly, almost every receiver, and I think I'm thinking about it this way too, just from a fantasy standpoint. Like, no fantasy wide receiver is playing like expected. I think one of the number one wide Nakua is the main standout in wide receiver in fantasy football, and he just got hurt as well. But there's so many injuries right now; it's absolutely insane. But I want to get into the playoff picture here. If you look at it right now, after week 6, the AFC teams that are in the playoffs right now would be the Colts, Steelers, Chargers, and Patriots, who are all number 1 in their division. And then the wild card teams would be Bills, Jaguars, and Broncos. And then, honestly, I really only see like 2 teams right now that are on the bubble, no teams are eliminated right now, but the only teams really that I think put up a chance in the AFC right now, other than the playoff teams, would be the Texans and Chiefs. The Ravens are 1-5. I can maybe say they might have a run, but there's been 4 teams since 1970 that have made the playoffs after starting 1-5. I think it'd be very, very hard for them to come back from that. Bengals and Raiders are even higher in the standings right now than the Ravens. But the Chiefs and Texans, I'd say even maybe the Texans. The Texans are 2-3 right now. I don't think they've shown anything too crazy for me to be like, wow, I think they could really pick it up. They have a great defense. I think they're just struggling to protect CJ Stroud, which I'm really not surprised about. But I think the most surprising thing, obviously, is the Colts are the number 1 seed right now after 6 weeks. And then Steelers, Chargers, Patriots. I mean, I didn't expect the Patriots to be... I'm actually not surprised the Patriots are playing well. I think people had a lot of faith in Mike Vrabel and Dgmg, and I think they're playing how people expected. They don't have a lot of talent on offense other than adding Stephon Diggs and rookie running back Travion Henderson. But, I mean, it's been a pleasant surprise seeing some of these teams. I think it's fun to see a change in pace, and honestly, it looks like the playoffs did like a decade ago. I think it's kind of fun to see. And then the NFC playoff picture right now, pretty similar to what I feel like you usually see for the NFC, except I think there's a lot more competition in this conference other than the AFC. The Buccaneers have the 1 seed right now, and then followed by the Packers, 49ers, and Eagles, who are all winning their division. And then wild cards right now are Seahawks, Lions, and Rams. This conference, the NFC, also has, in my opinion, the best division in the league. All teams are above 500, and that's the NFC North with the Packers, Lions, Vikings, and Bears. I think all 4 of these teams have shown promise to be able to make the playoffs, and I think Vikings are the weakest in the bunch, just I think for the quarterback play. I think it's a little questionable having Carson Wentz and JJ McCarthy. They don't have stability there, in my opinion, but they have a lot of talent around that team, and there's a reason why they're 3-2 right now and still in conversation and have a chance to make the playoffs. Obviously, it's still early in the season, but yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by this either. I think there's a lot more competition, though, that we're seeing. The Falcons have been very iffy and inconsistent this season. They just beat the Bills, but they also lost to some teams I wouldn't have expected them to lose to, despite who they have played against. So I think Falcons, Bears, Vikings, and Commanders, who are all on the bubble right now, all have a chance to make the playoffs 100%. And the Panthers are actually 3-3 right now. I'm not as confident in the Panthers making the playoffs. I think they've looked fine, but I don't think they're anything compared to these other teams I've mentioned. So, if anything, I think if I were to predict the playoffs right now, I think a lot of it would stay the same for the AFC, except I think the Chiefs are very obviously gonna, I think, sneak into the playoffs there, other than the fact that I think that the Chiefs are very obviously gonna make the playoffs. Broncos, I think, would be, if I were to replace the Chiefs for one of the playoff teams right now, would very much so be the Broncos. The Broncos played lights-out defense, sacking Justin Fields 9 times last week, but Bo Nix was a little questionable. That offense, I think, obviously revolving around Bo Nix, just needs to take another step forward. They barely beat the Jets after the Jets had negative net passing yards. I mean, I threw more yards than the Jets, technically, and I am in no way anywhere close to playing professional football. So that's my thoughts right now. And then heading into top 10 teams, very similar trend to what I've been talking about already, but I want to talk about how crazy the NFL has been. This has been something... I think this top 10 that I'm making right now most of these teams can be switched around, and I think it's one of the hardest top 10 teams I've made over the past year and a half when making this podcast. There is no clear top 5, top 3. Maybe there's a clear one right now, in my opinion. It's one of the only one loss teams, and I think you guys already know based off listening to this podcast earlier on the first few minutes. The Buccaneers I have at number 1. What Baker Mayfield has been able to do with this team, getting them to 5-1, when leading their division right now with all the injuries they've had, has been very impressive. And honestly, I think the loss to the Eagles, their one loss to the Eagles, just had a couple unlucky plays. They had blocked kicks in that game, and hey, it was a fun game to watch against the Eagles, but just to put that out there, that one loss that they had was not a blowout by any means, and they could have very well won that. But the top 10 teams going into this season, I mean, in no particular order, it was the Chiefs, Lions, Bills, Eagles were the Super Bowl winners, Packers, Commanders, Ravens, who are now 1-5, Buccaneers, and maybe Broncos and Rams. You could have put the Chargers in there, maybe a couple other teams, but that was, I feel like, the consensus top 10 teams that you had going into the season, in no particular order that I put them in. But half those teams are not even in the top 15 right now. I mean, like I said, I have Buccaneers at 1 in the top 10. At 2, I still have the Lions. The Lions did lose to the Chiefs this past week, but I mean, I think they've still been on fire. This offense is on fire since week 1 against the Packers when they lost, and they haven't lost since. I mean, I guess this week they did lose to the Chiefs, but before that they had not lost since. This offense did not take a step back after losing Ben Johnson. And the defense is, I mean, there's some holes in the defense, but they got Aiden Hutchinson, lots of star players on that team. And then at 3, I do have the Bills still. They've been struggling, don't get me wrong, but I think this bye week will be really helpful for them. And like I said, with the amount of teams just being so inconsistent right now, I'm fine with keeping the Bills at 3, but this is where it changes. The Colts I have at 4 right now, and the Colts going into the season, honestly, we're a bottom 10 team. Having Daniel Jones, starting him after him being cut by the Giants last season. But now you reverse that. Daniel Jones is in MVP conversations. He's played very, very well this season so far. That offense, Tyler Warren, the rookie tight end, has been playing great. Michael Pittman, JT, Jonathan Taylor, I think has been the best running back in the league so far this season. So he has a lot of weapons to help him on offense, which I think has been a really big part on why they're doing so good right now. Their average scoring is really well right now. However, I think they did have a pretty easy schedule, so I'm curious to see as their schedule gets harder how they'll play, because they crushed the Cardinals and Raiders the past 2 weeks, but two of their losses come from the Broncos and Rams, who are two, in my opinion, possible top 10 teams right now. So I'm curious to see how they'll continue to play. And then Chiefs, 2 weeks ago I had them in the top 5, I'm pretty sure. They dropped a little bit, but they're back up in the top 5. I have the Chiefs at number 5. They just pretty well beat the Lions this past week, and I think I think they have so much experience and are such a well-coached team that they're gonna make the playoffs. They're gonna be in the top 10 no matter how old they are. So Chiefs I have at 5. At 6 I have the Packers. The Packers, after their bye week, I thought they were struggling a little bit with the Bengals this week, but they handle business. Okay, let's just put it that way. They handle business. Have some decent talent. It looks like Matthew Golden's getting involved a bit more. I think the defense stepped up again compared to the Cowboys tie right before their week 5 bye week. But they've had a couple rough games these past 3 weeks, with losing the Browns, tying to the Cowboys, and first half kind of keeping it close to the Bengals. But I think overall they played very well this past week against the Bengals. 1-1, so second seed in the NFC right now, deserving of that 6th spot. And then the Seahawks, they beat the Steelers. They had a shootout with the Buccaneers. They've been scoring a lot, and I think you can credit Sam Darnold with that. I think he's turned it on these past few weeks. So I have them at 7. At 8, they've fallen now. The Eagles, I think they had the two of their wins, the Rams and Buccaneers. I think they had some lucky blocks and some big plays there, but their offense has struggled. I mean, they have very talented wide receivers in Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and they're barely getting them involved. Dallas Goedert finally had a good game this past week, but Saquon is not nearly on pace for the 2000, which he should not have not have been expected to be, but I don't think he's on pace for 1,000 yards yet this season. I think the offense is struggling. Yeah, I mean, the reigning Super Bowl champs, I think, are just a little underperforming a little bit. And then I have the Rams at 9 and Broncos at 10. I think the Broncos also could be interchangeable with a couple teams here with the Patriots, Steelers, and Chargers, especially with the way the Broncos played this past week against the Jets. The Chargers, Patriots, and Steelers, I think, are all arguably top 10 teams as well at the moment. But that's all I have for today. Thank you guys for listening. Don't get me going, and I'll see you guys next time.